Welcome to Business Over Brew. I'm your host, Nick Dar. Pleased to be joining you. Another episode here and a little bit different guest this time. We usually have small businesses on and talk about the trials and tribulations of being a small business owner. But this time, pleased to be joined by Village of Godfrey Economic Development Director, Jim Mager. Jim, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Nick, thanks for inviting me down. Appreciate it.
Well, you and I have worked together on a lot of different projects. Really designed to help the small business community. And I want to get to those and kind of just the role of small businesses and how small businesses work together with local governments to, hopefully succeed and prosper and grow the community. But I thought I'd start with just you've got an interesting position. So how does one get to be the economic development director of a municipality?
Well, in my case, I think I kind of fell into it. But in my particular case, I was over at SIUE, and I was in the School of Business, and I ran the Small Business Development Center. But I've lived in Godfrey most of my adult life, my career. I came here right after college. So I had served on the Economic Development Committee for years out there in Godfrey. And so we had an economic developer, and he had left. And so, they were muddling along without one for a while, and he was full-time. And so I had retired from SIUE, but after working 50 and 60 hours a week, retirement didn't work for me. So I had started a small window cleaning business, and I had that rolling along pretty good. But I was still serving on the Economic Development Committee out there. Well, as I said, the economic developer, they were without one. And so Pam Whistler and Mary McCormick at the time, they were going along without one, but they kind of realized they needed somebody there. So they came to me one day and said, Jim, would you be willing to do that on an interim basis to get us through? And I said, well, I've kind of started this business. And I don't want to be calling up my customers a few months later now and say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I said, I can probably get you a couple days a week on an interim basis. And that was, I think, 6 years ago. So I put in more time. I'm about half time now, but that's kind of how it came to be.
Are you still doing the window cleaning business too, or
yeah,
a little bit on
a little bit? Yeah.
Well, that's kind of just a example of you people. You hear entrepreneurs, especially talking about academia, and you're going to really put it into practice. Well, you did it. So
well, and I was in a school of business. I taught management, marketing, and entrepreneurship. So yeah.
I mean, you should probably be hosting the show. Really,
I don't know about that, Nick. I don't. Let's don't say that.
So you've been doing it 6 years. What is the role of, as you see it, economic development director?
Well, depending on what community you're in, economic developers can have different roles. But I see my role, and I was having a conversation with the mayor on this the other day. I really see my role as I'm the advocate. I'm the voice for our small businesses. In today's environment, it is really tough to run a small business. You've got increased labor costs. You've got difficulties trying to find people to work. Illinois being a progressive state, they can make it difficult. And so I have a heart for the small business person. I know what they have to go through to make their business successful. And so that's how I kind of see my role. Now, if Godfrey had an opportunity to recruit a major employer into town, I'm going to put everything I can behind it. But I really do like being the advocate and the voice for our small businesses.
Well, and we've talked about on this show, and you and I have talked about it's not just because we like small business owners, though most of them are fine people. It's just they're so instrumental in a community. They're really, as you said before we turned the mics on, they're just the backbone of the community.
They are the backbone of the community. In Godfrey, I can't tell you the exact number of small businesses that we have, but it's somewhere around about 211 small businesses. And so here's my list. I'll show it to the camera. Here's the list. Here's all of our little businesses in town. So you can see it's about 4 pages of small print. But if I were to take out all of the small businesses, my list would probably look something like this.
Right.
They are key to our economic activity in Godfrey. And They're very, very important.
I mean, and that's 200, let's say, call it 200, maybe small businesses in the community, maybe, give or take a few.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got the population sign up on the screen, population of 18,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably give or take a few now too. But, I mean, that's a pretty large percentage of the population, being served by small businesses in the community.
Yes. In fact, got some statistics here that I thought I'd bring down with you. There are about 33 million small businesses in the country, and they employ about 62 million. So that's a lot of people.
Right.
I
mean, that's a real high percentage of our workforce.
And they make up somewhere around, and it depends on what statistic you're looking at. They make up about 95% of the private sector employment in the country. So we hear you get a lot of news about the major employers.
Right.
But it's the small businesses that are keeping everything going,
and not just employing people. But you brought a couple of shirts for from softball and baseball. That's typically the names that you see on those shirts.
Exactly. If you go out to Glazebrook or Gordon Moore on any weekend or any weeknight, you're going to see hundreds of kids out there, if not thousands, playing a sport, be it soccer or softball or whatever. And so you'll see these names here on the front of these shirts. Here's Dan's Garage Door in Godfrey. Here's actually mine, Window Clean. My point is, and no disrespect to any of our large businesses, but you will not see Walmart on these shirts. These are all mom and pop small businesses for the most part that are supporting your community activities.
And if you talk to local charitable organizations, most of their contributions are coming from local small businesses.
Exactly.
In the form of sponsorship or whatever. And not that big businesses don't help a community. They certainly can. And not that they don't make charitable contributions as well. They do. It's just a little bit different.
It's different. It's different. Yeah.
The way they do it. So how do you balance that? Because like you said, it's, your job is really it's pretty simple, and it's economic development. And sometimes you just have to, I guess, really weigh, a big business coming to town versus, a small business and what impact it might have. Like Walmart's a great example of a store that's probably good for the consumer and good for the community, but it no doubt can hurt small businesses too.
It can.
Or it has in the past. That may be
how I look at it is this. A community can spend a great deal of time and money going out there trying to recruit major employers into the area. In fact, we're a member of Greater St. Louis, and so maybe a couple times a week, they'll send out solicitations of a major employer that's looking for a site. But I have not been able to match a site up with what these major employers are looking for. So you, as a community, can spend great amounts of time trying to go out and recruit some major employer to come into town. The reality of it is the success rate of that is minuscule.
Right.
So where you are gonna make some gains is you really do have to create that environment in your community and be to where small businesses can thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can then deal with entrepreneurship. You can then assist with people who are thinking about starting a business. And then you also need to be very cognizant of creating an environment and supporting the businesses that you already have. And you and I have worked together a number of times on doing that.
Right.
And so that is where the return of your investment is going to occur. Oh, if you can land something that's going to bring in 500 jobs, that's great. But that is so few and far between that you really need to, in my mind, you've got to put your emphasis on how do you create a community that's going to be very supportive of your small businesses.
This might be a misconception on my part, but I think it certainly feels like the community, maybe that's the social media community, gets more excited when a name brand comes to town. Well, I'll use like Starbucks as an example. People are really, get excited about that. And that's mostly, I think, just brand awareness and, and branding. But I would love us to get to a point as a community where we're equally or more excited to see a small business open up a brick and mortar store, or even not a brick and mortar store.
Well, it is, companies spend great amounts of money developing their brands. And so when you see these brands
And I'm
come in,
thankful that they do.
yeah. And so people recognize those brands. But here's the other thing that you have to understand. And I think this is really true of a community like Godfrey and maybe some extent Alton, but very much Godfrey, I think. Let's take a Five Guys hamburger establishment. If you look at their site requirements, they're going to want to see 10,000 people in a 1 mile radius.
Probably not going to find that in Godfrey.
You're not going to find that in Godfrey, and I might even doubt if you can find it in Alton.
Right.
To find a spot in Alton where there are 10,000 people within a 1 mile radius. So at least wise in Godfrey, I don't know about Alton, but in Godfrey, if you were to go and ask most residents of Godfrey, do you want to live in a community that's got 10,000 people in a 1 mile radius? Most of them are probably going to say no.
Well, I'm personally a Godfrey resident. I'm happy to have my, 1 acre of land and not really anybody right around. And Godfrey's interesting because I don't know what the last number I heard, but by land mass, it's one of the larger municipalities, if not in Illinois.
And one of the things that we've got to answer out there, and we're getting ready to update our comprehensive plan, for you to get that population density to be able to attract those national brands, you got to rack and stack people. You've got to have. You aren't talking duplexes,
right?
You're talking 300 and 400 unit apartment complexes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that Godfrey wants that. I don't know that, but I don't think they do.
And you used Five Guys as the example, and I'm not picking on them, and I'm sure they're smarter than me and have researched this heavily. But what you maybe don't understand about a municipality like Godfrey is we're all used to driving 15 minutes to grab something to eat. So we don't look at it as having to be within 1 mile of the place. But anyway,
my wife and I were over at Edwardsville and Carbon a little while back. And of course, we're making our way up Troy Road, and it's stop and go. It's 10 miles an hour,
30 minutes from one side of town to the other.
And I looked over at Mary, my wife, and I said, Mary, I don't want Godfrey to be like this. You live in Godfrey. I live in Godfrey. I really like driving down Godfrey Road at 40 miles an hour.
That's right. Plenty of time, plenty of space. Yeah. My 13-year-old's on a baseball team, the Bluff City Sox, and they play their home games at Gordon Moore. And we do have an Edwardsville player or two on the team. And he said, it's funny, I can get to Gordon Moore almost faster than I can to, a field on the other side of Edwardsville, just because it takes so long to get there. And I mean, I guess that's a consequence of maybe some prosperity, but I'm with you. I like it the way it is. So I hope
it's a question that has to be answered. And as I said, we get all kinds of suggestions that, well, we need this or we need that, or we need an Olive Garden, or we need a Texas Steakhouse. And if we had one of those, why everybody in Godfrey would go. Well, even if everybody in Godfrey went, it's still not a population density that these site selectors are looking for. So now I'm coming right back around. So where is our future? Our future is with our independently owned small mom and pop shops. We have to take care of those people. And I really think that's a major part of my job out there is to make sure that environment is created.
You guys, from the outside looking into me anyway, seem to really have a good understanding of the role of government and working with small businesses. And it's really just kind of to get out of the way and help them when you can, I think.
I'm the mayor and the trustees. Well, the mayor is a former business owner. He owned an Evo, so he
great client of mine.
Yeah. He understands it. And so the mayor and the trustees are very supportive of our small businesses. I don't know that I've ever really went and asked them for any type of support for a business or something that they turned me down. We've got zoning and ordinances, and you have to adhere to those, but they don't try to get in the way of our merchants and our businesses. They for the most part try to figure out how to make it work.
Right. And you guys have done a lot of things in that direction, of course. Talk about maybe some things on the horizon in the village that people might want to know about that might be coming up.
Well, I can give you a little bit of an update on some of the projects.
Sure.
I can do that. The old Halloran property there at the end of Stamper Lane, that was purchased by a developer over in St. Louis, and of course, all those old buildings have been torn down. And Godfrey did help with some of that. And so, where that project is, the reason people might think, why is that moving so slowly? It's a lot of it with IDOT.
Right.
We have submitted. What's going to happen is Stamper Lane is going to be extended across Godfrey Road into that property, and then there'll be 2 buildings built there for retailing. So that 3-way stop signal is going to be made into a 4-way. So we're in the process of working with IDOT right now to get that done.
I was thinking about that the other day, about people wondering, why is this project taking so long or that project taking so long? And I think most people are just overly optimistic when it comes to big projects like that. They take a while. And I was just thinking about the concept of trying to, it's tough because you want to build some excitement, but I do think maybe there's a point where you build the excitement and then everybody's like, what's happening? So it's a tough balance.
Yeah.
Just
as another example of why things move so slowly.
And not to mention, after COVID, they moved maybe
more slowly.
Right.
So some people may know too that what's going to happen is if you look at Pierce Lane, if people know where Pierce Lane is, from Delmar up to Stamper, it's a nice concrete curb, sidewalks. It looks really nice. Then when you get to Stamper, it's basically a blacktop road up to Airport.
Right.
Well, there's current plans, and the plans is that we're going to go ahead and extend those improvements for Pierce Lane on up to Airport. So from all the way from Delmar all the way up to Airport Road will look exactly like it does on the south end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to do that, we have got to get right-of-ways from 22 property owners.
So that takes a while.
We're up to 4.
Up to 4, right.
It just takes a while.
Hey, that's 20%, right?
Yeah, it just takes a while.
It does. I meant to ask you this question. Things do, when you're talking about moving an entire area or municipality in one direction or another, or moving a big project, I mean, it's going to be at a glacier-like pace. And I think about that with our community. Obviously we were a manufacturing community. Had a lot of big industry in town and where most people worked for a long time. That ship has sailed and not coming back. Yeah. And I think that's one thing we've struggled with just community wide is, what is our identity going forward of, what are we going to hang our hat on? I was talking to a business owner friend of mine yesterday, and we both agreed, wouldn't it be cool if we hung our hat on, this is really the entrepreneurial small business capital of the region.
Of the region. It could be, sure. I think that we have some opportunities in that regard in terms of a small business. You keep in mind that I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, going back to how small businesses create the character for your community.
Right.
So let's just look at both Alton and Godfrey. When you think about things to do, places to go, and again, I'm not dissing major businesses, but think about it. Fast Eddie's, Josephine's, Bakers and Hale,
right?
Roper's, Max. When we think about communities and things to go to do, you think about those kinds of businesses.
Right.
Now, I know lots of people maybe go to Red Lobster, but Red Lobster. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. Yeah.
When you think about the character of a community, it tends to be linked to those independent businesses that are offering some type of a unique experience.
Right. And what we often don't think about, I think, is the number of people that are in town that temporarily, on a short-term base, that is just traveling here for whatever reason. Maybe it's business, maybe it's a baseball tournament or soccer tournament or whatever the case may be. When I go out of town, we specifically intentionally look for, non-chain places to go.
Something different.
Something with some character that we haven't experienced before, and that we won't be able to experience when we go home.
Right.
So that's another, another check mark for small businesses as well.
I bet you could walk downtown New York and mention Fast Eddie's, and somebody say, "Yes, I know about that."
Yeah,
but who knows about Red Lobster or Olive Garden?
Right. Well, they might know.
They know it, but it's nothing. Yeah. It's nothing distinctive.
Right. You reference your monthly or weekly newsletter that you send out, and it amazes me. I think a lot of laws that get made at the federal or state level that apply to businesses really have the most impact on like businesses my size, 10 to 15, 20 employees, depending on what time of year you're talking. And they're probably not really intended to prevent me from doing something that
unintended
consequences. But what they do is they create, whether that's time or money or increased cost or whatever the case may be, it ends up, that's who it typically punishes. I feel like
that is exactly the point I was making in my newsletter. I forget the bill number, but Illinois has passed a law now that if you're going to use an independent contractor, you've got to write a contract with that person. You've got to keep that contract on file for 2 years. You've got to pay them within 30 days, blah, 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 on and on and on. Well, if you're a small business person, you don't have the time to do that. And if you need to bring somebody in to do something because you can't afford to keep a full-time employee to do it, so you hire so-and-so to come in and take care of that for you. A handshake, go do that. It's done.
Right.
But now we got this.
I mean, in one of the most glaring examples to me in the last year or two was I can't remember what it was, the paid time off.
Paid leave. I hate that.
Where an employee can now, with no reason and really no notice, say, "Hey, I'm not coming in today."
Well, it's both financial and it's both regulatory, because with that particular piece of legislation, you're a small business person. Use myself for example. Maybe I'm going to go, I've got a job set up that day to go do some windows. Well, maybe I'm going to have I don't have any employees because I don't want to get to that level. But you've got a job plan. You're a contractor. You're going to go build a deck. You've got a job plan and you're thinking, okay, so-and-so is going to work today. I got this all lined up. I'm going to be out there with the truck. So-and-so's coming in, and you get a call at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm not coming in today. Well, you can't even ask them why they're not coming.
Right. And I think about who was that law made for? Like what percentage of business owners were violating that in some way, like not giving people, maybe it's more than I think.
I don't know.
The small business owners I know, they treat their people pretty well.
Exactly.
We give them time off. It wasn't an issue that I was just thinking, who was clamoring for that problem to be solved?
It's the same way with this independent contractor thing. Who needed that?
Right. Yeah.
So as I said, we're coming right back to full circle. That's why I just think I see my job as trying to be the advocate and the voice of our small businesses.
Well, and just philosophically, you guys seem to do things to make it easier for small business owners, and I can't say the same about a lot of times at the state and federal level. Especially being a radio station that's, regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. Like, most of the regulations are ones that we wouldn't come anywhere near violating. Like,
and then when I was thinking about you, and in terms of when you think about the economic impact of small businesses, you're greatly affected by that, because who are your advertisers?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're all small businesses.
They're small businesses.
And if their costs increased in another area, or you just get so frustrated with the whole process and you just throw your hands up and say, you know what, entrepreneurship, small business ownership's not for me. Well, that's one less in the pool that we, will have as a client, which, is just a snowball effect. And the less revenue we have, the less employees we can have. Yeah. So it all does have an impact.
Sure does.
So
and let me throw out another statistic for you. Maybe people don't realize this. And I was working on my farm this week, and a piece of equipment blew up. and it's for transfer. I was doing water, moving water for irrigation. Well, as hot as it is, that pump blew up. Well, I could not buy the pump locally, so I had to go online. It's amazing. I ordered that pump late in the day, and that part late in the day, and it was on my doorstep at 7 o'clock the next morning. That's amazing. I don't know how they do it.
And that is one area where I have, I don't know if challenged is the right word, but had conversations with other small businesses about, listen, just being locally owned and operated is not enough. You've got to be able to compete with that.
You've got to be able to compete with that. But having said that, though, I would encourage our folks in our communities, throw out a statistic here. If you spend $1 with a local merchant or a local person, 67 cents of that dollar will stay in the community. 67 cents. If you spend your money with a company that's not locally owned, only about 20 cents stays in the community. And I would assume if you go online, it's less than that, because nothing stayed in the community.
Yeah, right. And I'll just make a pitch for local advertising, whether that's with us or Riverbender or whomever that might be. Most of that money stays in the community, whereas if those ad dollars are spent with Facebook or where, other name the social media, like you said, none of those dollars are staying in town.
No, they're not staying in town. So I get it. It's real. Sometimes you just don't have a choice. You got to sit down at the computer and you order it and it shows up at the doorstep. And I get that. But I guess what I would encourage people is when you can, make an effort to spend your money with a locally owned business.
I think that's a great place to end the conversation. Next time we can talk about how in the world we went from, the grass growing like crazy to totally dried out in about a week, it seemed like.
I know.
But Jim, thanks so much for joining us on the show. We'll have to do it again sometime. And great insight, and appreciate what you do for the community. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.